How's it going, team? Hope you are well. Back at it again, covering the score editor. Today we're going to be adding text. So what I did here was I clicked on text in the part box, dragged this in, typed in the word test, and then after that, I discovered through the user guide that you can change the text. So if we go to layout and if we go to text styles, you can actually configure your own styles or utilize their pre-configured sets in order to make your score look just the way you want it to. So for example, let's say I wanted to change my repeat endings so that the font wasn't as big, and you can see that this is illustrated alongside here, or maybe you want to make it humongous, right? So you could change that here, perhaps box it, circle it, what have you. And then once you make that change, you're going to want to change that inside of the event editor. So you don't see a style category per se, but you do see number. And so rather than choosing text, I will choose, for example, chord symbol, and you will see that change. A couple of other things that we can do up here is change the style. So for example, if I have this set to treble, it's going to look a little different. Piano, it's going to fit the bill. We can quantize here. This is how I had it set up before. If I change this to quarter notes, let's see what this sounds like. So you can also enable interpretation from the region inspector, syncopation, and no overlaps if need be. I believe this is still just visual. Yes, it is. All right, so that now we know how to create new text styles and how to switch back and forth between these. You can create new text styles if that's something that you desire. You can import text styles from another project if you've already done all of that work. It looks like we can add automatic text to a score. The text group in the part box contains 4 objects that you can use to display the level, instrument name, project name, and date. The corresponding text is automatically displayed at the position you place the object. Automatic text objects can be inserted as both global text or as text objects related to a bar position. For example, you can insert the instrument object as a global object to display the name of the current score set on all pages. The appearance and exact positioning of these objects can be set in the event inspector. So let's add an automatic text from the part box. All right, so for example, let's drag in the date. All right, so there it is right there, April 13. Let's drag in the name of the song. Piano Ideas, there it is right there. All right, the instrument that we're working with. Okay, so all of that is done there. Now, how these are set will be adjusted in the event inspector. For example, this piano, let's say I wanted to move it down or up a bit, you would change that right here in the value column. Okay. We can also change its positioning if we wanted to by using position. All right, you can also edit this inside of the event inspector here. So if I click on that, I can move this to another part of the page. I can also change how it looks based on the text styles. As you guys remembered earlier, we can change that over in the event editor as well, but it's probably more aptly suited for this section. We can align this by using all of the various pieces here. That's really nice, easy workflow. And then we can control the vertical position and the horizontal position as well. Now, this pertains to anything that you select, right? Anything that has text, I'm just changing it. If I start grabbing the notes, this is another place where we can edit inside of the event inspector, change articulations if applicable, and then of course change the notes themselves. All right, let's continue on here. Let's start working with chord grids. Logic Pro includes a large library of chord grids in standard tuning and a variety of alternative tunings. You can review and edit existing chord grid libraries as well as create your own. The chord grid library window contains 3 panes. Okay, so let's highlight that important language. Again, would be my first time opening this up. So let's do this together and dissect it. Logic Pro Preferences Chord Grid Library. Right up here. See, I thought it was inside of the preferences, but it's inside of the menu set. Okay, so we're going to close a couple things. All right, the instrument editor, chord grid selector, and then chord grid editor. Let's see how we can utilize this. We can also go to layout and choose chord grid library from the score editor menu. So let's say we were in here, layout, chord grid library. All right, page 813. Okay, so in order to utilize this, we would have to drag a chord grid symbol from the part box, which we've already shown you in this series, into the score. And then you can either double click on that to change it or just grab another one and replace the one that is currently standing there. The editor of the chord grids is just basically going to allow you to view, create, and edit instrument tunings and chord grid libraries. So here we have the name, the library column, the tuning that you're working with, strings, chords. There's an import button in case you've done all this work or you want to export a library. You can delete and then, of course, create. So let's see how we can utilize this in our productions. So we can select and filter individual chords from your instrument tunings and chord grid libraries in the grid selector. Okay, so this is an editor of sorts, and how this works is when you grab a chord grid and drag it in and you double click it, or just automatically is going to pop up, you now have the option of selecting the chord to create chord charts, and or you can edit the chord. For example, here you see C major 7/9. And so if I start changing these notes, you will see that it changes the quality of the chord, right? And so then if I hit OK, I've now created another chord. I can add this C7/13. And if I want to, I can use this as the chord in my song. In this case, I'll just choose your standard C minor. We can preview, determine the root note, the bass note, the difficulty of the chord, right? Number of frets that you are seeing. So if I want to see 6, that's going to adjust that. So let me hit OK, and now you will see that chord reflected in your score. So that's a nice relationship between the chord grid library and how you can create that in advance, and then the ability to access those chords inside of the chord grid selector. 2 different things. Make sure you make that distinction. All right, now if you want to listen to this as an arpeggio, you would click here, go to arpeggio up, and then you can preview that chord in a different way. Again, that was only determined by clicking here. Let's hear this fast. So that's a really nice feature just in case you are creating music for musicians and you want to select the proper voicing or positioning of that chord. I mean, an open C chord is going to sound very different than, say, a C chord on the 8th fret of a guitar, right? So that's really important. Now, the one thing I'm not seeing is the ability to just add from this chord grid library. The only thing I found to work is you double click on the actual chord and then you're able to select what it is that you're looking for. And then you can hit OK, and then that will replace it. And then just bear in mind another way to add this chord grid symbol is to make sure that this is selected in the part box, hold Command, and that should allow you to insert a guitar chord uh, in the same way. I'm not sure why it's there. You go. So if I hold Command, I can insert another guitar chord in that same manner. So let's say I wanted C sus2, I hit OK, and then now we can see that reflected here. If you're looking to align chords vertically, you could control click any of them and then align positions vertically, and that should be able to get them to match. Let's select both of these and again, set that up. It seems not to be matching up the way it's supposed to, but try it out on your end and I'm sure it'll work just right. All right, let's keep going here. 820. If you want to copy an existing chord grid, you would just perform all the same options that we're used to inside of Logic Pro. You can hide the chord name by control clicking hide chord name. Create custom chord grids, and this is where this really shines. Again, something that I don't really do, but it's important to go over just in case you need it for your reasons. So click the clear button in the chord editor pane. And so let's go ahead and open that up under layout, chord grid library. So we go to the chord grid editor and let's hit clear and we'll just start from scratch. The chord grid display is cleared, allowing you to create one from scratch. Set the chord and view parameters to suit your need. So chord and view parameter. So I want to see 6 frets. I want the root note to be D. What's the bass note? Let's just do over A. All right, good. The chord type is going to be minor 7. And then the difficulty is just easy. All right, we can make this a favorite. And then we can add this D6/9 sus4 into the library here. Now, of course, we would need to add the chords in order to be able to pull this off. Again, play with it. I think you'll find your groove and how this is going to work for you. Bear in mind, there's 4,621 visible chords that you can use inside of this library. So it's very well equipped to give you exactly what you need. I wonder if there's a quick way to browse. Let's read a little bit more to see if there is. So now you know how to create your own custom chords. You can edit the existing chord by double clicking. So let's say this wasn't working for me. We can start adding our own interpretation, or instead of a C, we want to make this C7/11, right? Or it could just be a C7. Maybe we want to make this a flat 9, whatever the case may be. If you would like, you can change the position of this. So here's second position, here's third position, etc., etc. So pretty intuitive to use. I got to be honest. If you hover over, you can just click and move one of these notes. So like this is a C7, but I also have another way to voice it. So that's pretty cool. You can change the fret position as well if I wanted this here instead of there. And it looks like if we control click, we can set the finger number. So if you don't want this to be the index, probably more aptly suited as the 4th finger, and then we will make this the third finger, you can do that. In fact, this should probably be the second, and this should probably be the first. All right, 823. You can add additional fingering dots. Option click a string to create an optional dot. So let me see. So I'll option click here, and this gives somebody the option of barring this ring finger on both the second and third string. If you want to delete something, click on it, make sure it's in focus, and then simply hit delete. You can also just click up here on top of the guitar and then just remove. Like here I have an open E playing, so I'm going to X that out. Let's say we don't want to utilize the first string. I'm going to click up here, and now that's an open string. Or of course, you don't have to play it at all by marking it this way. Okay. We can add bars to a chord grid. Just as I was trying to do earlier, drag the left or the right edge of an existing dot to the right or left. So if I hover and use what I would call the resize tool, we can create a bar over those two. That's pretty sweet. 825. Place the pointer over a string, drag left or right. If you want to move that bar, of course, we can delete it. How do we mute? Wonder if it's just Control M. Click the area at the top of the string as I showed you earlier. Something else that we can do, yeah, we can unmute. I already showed you how to do that. And now let's talk about adding and editing chord grid libraries in Logic Pro. Let's add and edit chord grid libraries in Logic Pro. We can create grid libraries for an existing instrument tuning or for a new instrument tuning. You could do this inside of the instrument editor. Remember that there are 3 tabs that we can utilize. So inside of the instrument editor pane, we're going to create a new set. So let's just do that now. Create. All right, then we get this. I'll just call this test. And as far as tuning, I'll just use the default EADGBE. So it looks like you can change these, in which case you would not be able to access the regular default tuning. So I will hit create. All right, page 828. That would then add this to the new chord grid library to the chosen instrument tuning. All right, so once we do that, wait, is this double to create a new chord grid library? Create a new for an existing instrument tuning, and then if you wanted to create a new one, then yeah, then basically you would just change the key and then create. You could also rename inside of the library column. So by double clicking, you can change the name by way of the text entry box. If you wanted to delete, we would select the instrument tuning and then hit delete. So let's say I wasn't rocking with this, we could just hit delete and get rid of it. It looks like since this is my default, it's not allowing me. Let me go ahead and just create an extra one here. So let me change this and I will call this my library name. We will hit create. And again, let's say that's not working for us. We would delete by hitting the button there. I was trying to hit the delete key and that wasn't working. We can import if you have some of these that you have created from the past, and same goes for export as well. When you export, enter a name for the library, click on save. Let's pretend that I was going to export this. Again, we'll call this test. I'll send it over to my desktop. And I hope you can see this, but it's going to look like this. A GCHDB file. I thought I had heard of every kind of extension in Logic, but alas, there's always something new. Let's go over edit score region parameters. All right, continuing on. It says here the score region parameters lets you control different aspects of how the regions are going to appear in the score. This, of course, will only affect the display of notes, but have no effect on the sound or the playback. You would want to enable the advanced features of the program to access style, quantize, interpretation, and many more. So we can select the staff style for the selected track from the staff style pop-up menu. So if we wanted to change the staff style, let's say we wanted to use guitar tablature, we could do that. Maybe we're writing for tenor sax, you could do it that way. Again, this is all just strictly visual here. Baritone sax, and let's go back to piano. Actually, I want to see what the lead sheet looks like. Nice. Okay. So we can choose to quantize, better known as visual quantization, setting the shortest note values that can be displayed. For example, a note with a short note value, such as a 30-second note, can only be displayed at its original length if quantize is set to 32 or shorter. If the quantize is set to 8, the 30-second note is displayed as an eighth note, and that's obviously not going to work. So this just allows us to look at the score and make it more readable for your players. Settings in the quantize pop-up menu that display a single value such as 8 or only 16 represent the minimum displayed note value for that quantize setting. For settings that display a pair of values, the first value represents the minimum note for duple rhythms, and the second value displays the minimum note for triple rhythms. So here they go over all of the various quantize settings, page 832. Page 833, music notation is meant as a guide to performance, and rhythmic values are often not notated with metronomic precision. Interpretation setting is going to help you produce a more readable score from real-time recordings. You should usually turn it off when adding notes via step input with the pointer or with the pointer. If interpretation is turned on, notes are generally displayed with longer length values than their actual length to avoid having many short rests. Short notes on a downbeat in 4/4, for example, are displayed as quarter notes. The score becomes slightly less precise, but it is easier to read. If interpretation is turned off, note lengths are displayed as closely as possible to their real values as determined by the quantized value. Following example, the same MIDI region is shown twice, the first with the interpretation turned off and the second with it on. So you can see how much easier it is to look at the second illustration with interpretation on. And again, that can be found in the inspector up here, interpretation. All right, we have another parameter called syncopation. Syncopation involves rhythmic patterns that go against the normal rhythm as defined by the time signature. Syncopation helps you produce a cleaner looking score by displaying syncopated notes with fewer ties or subdivisions. If you look at the illustration down here, this makes a lot of sense. Now we can play this. Let's say this is a percussive pattern. It's a lot easier to look at and play than using these ties here. If syncopation is turned on, each note is displayed graphically as a single note when possible rather than several tied notes, regardless of its rhythmic position. This actually applies to this piece. For example, here we have a couple ties that don't necessarily work. And so if I type in syncopation, you can see that it's going to clean up the overall performance. So on page 834, it says that you can turn on syncopation for individual notes, not necessarily by using the region inspector, but by using note attributes. So again, let's say I want to make some changes here. I would control click syncopation and force it, and you will see the changes take place here. If the syncopation settings produce unwanted results, you can change the graphic display of the notes connected with ties by adding a short user rest. You'll find that in the part box, left-hand side. Once the rest is inserted, it disappears, but the note display changes. The inserted rest can only be seen and edited in the event list. This trick works for all notes, not just syncopated ones. In polyphonic staff styles, the MIDI channel of the rest and the corresponding note must be identical. Let's continue on with no overlap. What is this about? The no overlap setting simplifies the display of overlapping notes. No overlap prevents the display of overlapping notes in melodies played with an exaggerated legato by shortening the displayed note length to the beginning of the next one. Notes beginning simultaneously, think interval or chords, are displayed with the length of the shortest note in the chord. When no overlap is turned off, the score display shows the lengths of the overlapping notes precisely. This can be more useful to accurately notate chords, but may be harder to read, particularly for melodic passages. So this works for monophonic, but not polyphonic staff styles. So let's look at this. When overlap is turned off, you get this kind of readout. When the second example here is showing us the same example with no overlaps, and you can see it's a lot easier to look at. So no overlap should be turned off when the precise display of overlapping notes is more important than producing a smooth melodic line. All right, let's go to page 835. Logic User Guide, read humbly by Eddie Gray. Although you can't see that all notes continue to sound here, the results look like this if no overlap is turned off. So you've got another example here. It's going to look a little bit differently. Solution typically involves turning on no overlap and using the sustained pedal markings. Pedal markings are automatically displayed if notes are recorded in real time with the MIDI keyboard and sustain pedal. So we can show or hide by clicking on the checkbox. There is a way to exclude selected regions from the score display. It says here the score parameter in the region inspector controls whether MIDI notes in the selected region appear in the score. You can choose hide if you want to not display those in the score at any level above the region level. All right, so this is in the region inspector right here where it says region. We're going to go to score and we're going to hide it. Now you will see that essentially it's not here, even though this is in focus. We are in fact in the score editor. And so it's just not looking at that specific region. So if you ever want to exclude, this is the way that you would do this. Funnily enough, this is something that I just saw inside of the Apple community. All right, let's continue on. If you want to edit default score parameters, new MIDI regions created by recording or with the pencil tool will include a default set of region parameters and event parameters. But we can view and edit these defaults when no staff is selected in the score editor. Defaults remain as set until you quit Logic Pro, but can be changed anytime. You can edit the default region and event parameters, except for the staff style, which is separate for each track and is set in the bottom line of the track inspector. And after we edit these defaults, the all new regions will use the new default settings. If Quantize is set to default, the quantized settings of the newly recorded or created region matches the division value shown in the LCD. So if we click an empty area of the score editor so that no region is selected, let me go ahead and turn this one on again. So let's show. So I will click on an empty part of the score. What happens now? Edit any of the parameters in the region inspector except style or in the event inspector. So if I make any changes here, particularly I'm referring to this side of the screen. Hold on. This side of the screen and the event inspector as well, which you can find right here. Then you will start to see those changes take place. Working with Logic Pro staff styles, you can control the display of clefs, rests, stems, ties, and beams. Change the displayed transposition, adjust the staff size, the space between the staffs. You can choose from a variety of predefined staff styles or customize and create your own staff styles to use in your scores. Staff styles affect the visual display of the score, but they have no effect on MIDI playback, just like most of the information that we have been reading here. Staff styles are saved as a part of the project. You can import frequently used staff styles into other projects to speed up your workflow. Quick tip: create a template project with the staff style and other score settings that you use frequently so they are available to you when you start a new project. Page 837. All right, so how do we assign these to tracks? You can assign a different staff style to each track in the score. Changing staff styles allows you to control the display of individual staffs in the score and quickly create parts. If you're not seeing this, you have to click on the staff itself in order to see staff styles. Each track has a default staff style, which appears where I just showed you. When you start working on a new project or create a project template, you can change the setting for tracks that will use a specific staff style so that regions recorded on these tracks are displayed with the correct staff style with no further editing. If you choose auto style, looking for that in here somewhere. Auto, do you guys see it? I don't see it here. Open staff style window. So that's something else you can get into. Just looking for this auto, nothing yet. I'm sure we will find it. Work in the Logic Pro staff style window. You view and edit staff style parameters inside of this window. The upper part of the window shows a list of available staff styles with a visual representation of the selected staff style. The lower part shows the staffs that are used for the selected staff style with parameters for each staff. The voices used for each staff are listed to the right. So the layout, you got the main menu bar, which is at the top, the style overview right here in the middle, staff parameters on the left-hand side, and then the voice parameters. So we're really talking about nailing a instrument's parameters in a very detailed way. So if you want to open this, just go to Layout, Staff Styles here in the menu bar. All right. If you want to change the view, let's click the upper part of the window right where it says View. So let's see here. Could change it that way, this way. Okay. Okay, in Logic, we have something called score sets, and we can use these score sets to control which software instrument tracks appear in the score. This also lets you produce a full score for a project together with individual parts, reorder software instruments, provide a name for each software instrument, control which staffs are connected to the brackets or bar lines, exclude tracks from being displayed, reduce or enlarge all staffs using the scale parameter, select from two different parameters for page margins. And how we do that is up here at the very top where it says filter. So for example, right now I'm looking at the piano, I'm looking at horns, and so we're just switching back and forth between the individual instruments or the entire score as a whole. If I go to layout score sets, we can also find it there. So we'll go layout, show score sets, and this becomes now an independent window. We can create a new empty set and then set this up how we deem fit. It says here we can create copies, create a score set for selected instruments, delete score sets, and then edit them. Of course, to rename, we double click the way we usually do. So for example, if I had something here that I wanted to rename, we can do that. As soon as I start double clicking, we can start adding instruments here, change their name. We can also just go new, add instrument entry, and begin to load instruments inside this way. Now remember, this is just a score set. We can also create a new empty set and begin the process all over again. Now we can access those inside here, right? So here's score set. That changes everything on my page. Here is test, same thing here. We can reorder the instruments, resize the score sets so that they visually look a little bit better for us. So how to do that, just go to scale here and you can increase that. And you can see that now that's being displayed inside of the score editor. Let's make this really small. Okay, you can see how small that is now. So when you're ready, you can print the score, save it as a PDF file, export as an image using the camera tool. I always wondered what that was for. The last method is most helpful if you want to export only a section of the score. Whichever method you choose, the printed score is identical to the score editor's page view display, except for the following items that are visible on screen but not printed. So this is what's visible on screen but not printed: dash lines, the pointer and the playhead, colors for page margins, hidden time signature changes, hidden note heads, hidden bar lines, hidden and tuplet numbers. How do we do this? We go to File, Print, or Command P. So let's try that out. I think I have that set up as my plugin manager. So let's go to File, Print, and then now we get this window here. Dialog appears from which you can choose the available options. If you want to export the score to a graphics file, how do we do that? Logic Pro Preferences Score pane. Let me clear this window here. Logic Pro. So inside of your preferences, when you do take a screenshot using the camera tool, it's either going to copy it to your clipboard or it's going to create a PDF. So for example, I set that up inside of score preferences. I select a PDF file and then I use the camera tool and I will take a screenshot of this, right? So then that asks me, where do you want to save? I hit desktop and you can see the score is right here. Let me open it up. There it goes right there. Okay, page 864. Make sure that you're viewing the score in page view. It's the best way to page view. Let me go back to the pointer tool, TT. When doing layout work that requires precision, such as positioning symbols and text elements, it's recommended that you work at a high zoom level. You can easily switch back and forth between a normal and enlarged view by using the zoom tool. Or you could just hit the key command option or control option, depending on if you're hovering over a region. But remember that if you click one time after you've set up a couple of snapshots, you will be able to zoom back in time. Looks like we can customize the overall look of the score editor inside of the view menu. So let's go into color and look at all the various offerings here. So we'll go to view, colors. Let's do show pitch. So that's going to look a little bit different if I zoom in a little bit tighter. Here, let me delete some of the stuff that we don't need anymore. Let's see here. Go to view, colors. Let's show velocity. So that's going to look a little bit different. Anything else? View, colors. Let's do force black and white. And there was one more, show voice assignments. Awesome. You can show folder contents in a Logic Pro score. The current display level allows more than one MIDI region to be viewed simultaneously, whether it's linked or unlinked. The Explode folder setting lets you display and print the contents of the different display levels simultaneously. If the current display level contains folders, their contents are also displayed in the score. The setting is not selected. Folders appear as gray beams in linear score view, and they're not shown at all in page view. All right. So let's go to view explode folders from the score editor menu bar. Okay, so view. That's already on. If you want to enable that or explode polyphony, you can do that. If you would like to display guidelines in the score editor, you can show an object's exact time position by displaying guidelines. How you do that is you go to View and Guides. So View, Guides, and here we will select all objects. And now we have a little bit more information to work with inside of the score editor. Team, thank you so much for your patience on that one. I completely understand that this is not an issue that I am proficient in, but regardless, my commitment stays the same. I don't care if I don't know how to do something. If I put my mind to it, learn it bit by bit. If this is something that you really need to learn, then please put the time and the energy that is required to really take this to another level. The reason that I did this was because it does not matter if you are having a bad day, if something lands on your lap, on your table, on your desk, on your inbox, you still need to be able to tackle it. Even if it's inch by inch, it's still something that is required, and these are things that we have to learn how to do. So I appreciate your patience on this one, and I hope that you see the value in just being persistent no matter what. I'm looking forward to catching you guys on the next one. I will be back live, as this will not require any prep work. The score editor is obviously not my strength. It's something that I've never even opened one time over, so there's a lot of gaps there. Highly recommend that if you do want to learn it, that you seek out a resource that will really enrich your understanding and fill in all of the gaps. When I see you next time, we are sharing projects, learning how to burn a project CD. These are all things that I can help you with in a very effective way. And we will be back and live from here on out, unless we get into something else that requires the score editor. But again, thank you so much for your time, energy, love, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take good care.